Hey, welcome Broken World Entertainment, and this will be the review for Season 3 of Star Trek Picard. Now, we've all been going into this a little worried, and of course, we've all heard what Robert Moy Burnett has said. He's been praising it for quite a while, saying it's back on form. That was followed up by Dave Cullen, who agreed that it's back to form, and now a few other names we all know. Gary from Nerdrotic, the Critical Drinker, Az from Heel vs. Babyface, they've all seen it and have also said they've enjoyed it. It was still worried going into this, so I'll give a non-spoiler and then a spoiler review. But first of all, is it back to form? Is it what we all know and love? Yes and no. And I'll get into that. The yes part is, to start with, the music is Star Trek music. It's a mix between Insurrection and First Contact. Like, it opens, you notice the beat and you're like, that's Insurrection's music. And the closing music was First Contact. But there's bits of it sprinkled here and there. And of course a lot of the Next Generation music in there. The characters are more, well, not all the characters, but Riker and Picard and Seven are more what they were in the shows. The original shows, I should say. Not New Trek. There's still a bit of the New Trek kind of elements in there. You know, the sets are still very dark. There's still lens flares. Yes, unfortunately, there's still swearing. The only swearing in this one comes from Raffi, who, like, in the one scene just can't stop saying shit. So, what is this show? Well, I should state first, the only returning people from the previous 2 seasons of Picard, other than, obviously, Patrick Stewart and Seven, are Raffi, unfortunately, because she's still dog shit of a character. That's it, I think. Yeah, none of the rest of them are there. There's no Agnes. There's no, what was he called? Elron, whatever the feck he was called. The stupid Romulan dude with the sword. There's no Rios. That was his name, wasn't it? Rios, the captain fella. He's not there. And whoever else was in the show, I don't know whether there was anyone else. I don't care. Starfleet looks more Starfleet. It's great seeing Space Dock look like Space Dock. It's great seeing Federation ships look like Federation ships. There's still a couple of the shuttles that you notice that are the Discovery era shuttles, and I hate that. The uniforms are trash. I still hate these new uniforms. And they're all different for some reason. But they're horrible. Your one that played Laris, she's in the first episode. Literally only the beginning, and then she's gone. So what's the show about this time round? At least episode 1, which is titled The Next Generation. So as I said, I'll give non-spoilers and then I'll go into spoilers. So Crusher calls for help from Picard. You've seen that in the trailers. He wants to go speak with her, to help her, obviously. So he calls in part of her message to him, which there's a clip of. So this isn't a spoiler because the clip has been out for a while. Paramount released the clip, like, where she says no Starfleet and trust no one. So he doesn't want to directly go to Starfleet, so he calls Riker. And Riker has a plan how to get out to where Crusher is. And it's to set up a ruse to get onto the USS Titan and take it out to that spot. Riker's no longer in command of the Titan. This Titan is a refit, which makes no sense because it's a completely different ship and even a new class compared to the Titan we all know, or at least you should know. I can't remember what it's exactly called. It's something Constitution class, this new version, which the first officer is 7 of 9. Captain is a guy called Liam Shaw, who doesn't want anyone to be calling 7 of 9 7 of 9. He prefers her being referred to as Annika Hansen, her human name. He doesn't particularly like Riker and Picard. I'm trying now to see what I can say without spoiling stuff. They do find Crusher. Again, we see this in the trailers. Her in the stasis pod. But there was her and someone else on the ship. We've seen him in the second trailer. The guy with the English accent. And he tells them we're being hunted. And they're saying, by who? And he goes, see for yourself. And the closing scene is this ship, which in the trailers looked a bit off, but in the show looks better than it doesn't. It's kind of a cross between the scimitar when its wings are extended, and which was Shinzon's ship, if anyone is wondering which one was the scimitar, and one of the Sona's ships. It's kind of like two of them put together, look wise. And that's where the episode closes out. The end credits, I advise you to watch those because there's stuff on the screen which are clues and setting stuff up. So keep that in mind. Riker's great. He's already stealing the show. Other people have said that as well. He definitely does. There's great interactions between him and Picard. And this time Picard's not sitting here taking shit from people. You know, people are questioning him and he's kind of quipping back at them. And Riker's standing up for him as well. Raffi is still just an annoyance, to be honest. She's still the worst part of this show. They've said, like, I've seen other people say they like her in this season, but I'm not feeling it. She's still quite annoying. And she's, like, her first scene in it, she literally says, like, shit, like, 10 times. That is one of the other big negatives. They still have swearing in it. And I do know there's an F-bomb coming up somewhere that apparently the actor improvised. Whew. So with that, I'll get into the spoilers now, because it's really the only way to break this episode down. So here comes spoilers. Being warned. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the show opens with Crusher's ship being attacked. We don't know by who, but there's this weird little ship who basically docks and she gets awoken by an intruder alert. She locks someone in a room. You don't see who that is. She goes out and starts taking them on, firing phasers at her. A proper phaser, proper looking phaser. It looks like the First Contact phaser rifle. Only this one you have to kind of pump it like a shotgun. And there's lights on the side that show you what you've been using. So she gets hit, she's wounded. She sends an encoded message to Picard. And then we go to Chateau Picard. And the first thing we're seeing is the painting of the Enterprise D. So he's there with Laris and they're talking, and he wants to send the painting to Geordi. And Laris is like, why would you want to get rid of it? And he's like, well, Geordi's in charge of the history museum type thing. Like, he would love this piece. And he tells a helper, like, pack it up and send it. And Laris tells him, don't you dare. And he's kind of, there's lots of little memorabilia around. There's the gold model of the Enterprise D that was on the Enterprise E. You do see, if you look carefully over from that angle, there's a shot where he's sitting at the desk. You can see that model in front of him. Laris is sitting across from him, and if you look behind her, you can see the gold model of the Enterprise E sitting there. He's got the flute that he was playing in the Inner Light, that episode, and he's talking about their memories, but he cherishes them, but they're only memories. So then he's sitting there and he's writing in a book, and you hear the communicator coming through. So he asks the computer, what is that? Where is it from? The computer doesn't know, which is weird because it's a comm badge. They were basically tracking devices. But he finds it, and it's in a box with his old TNG uniform, and he takes out the TNG, and he finds out it's got an encryption code on it. He breaks the code. I can't remember what the word is to break it. Something like Mordecai or something weird like that. Gets it, and it's a message from Beverly saying she needs her help remember the word. Is it Firebird or Freebird? I think it was Firebird. And then she says, like, she needs the help, but no Starfleet, and don't trust anyone. So he tells Laris he's going to have to go. And she's like, right, I'll meet you then. She says there's a great bar on some planet, and she'll wait for him there. And he's like, yeah, because they seem to be together. And they do allude that him and Crusher were in a relationship years ago. Now there's a couple of dates that don't work here. So he talks about a comm badge from the Enterprise D that's 20 years old. So the comm badge from that Enterprise is 20 years old. But then he says Beverly Crusher cut off all communications with him and everyone else from the crew 20 years ago. That doesn't make sense, because that would be in the Enterprise D, and of course she was in the TNG movies, which went beyond that. So those dates don't make a hell of a lot of sense. But anyway, he calls for help from Riker. This part is funny, because the first thing you see, they're at that 10 forward bar, but there's no Guinan. Eagle Moss, you know, the company who was doing the build the Enterprise D and collect the little ships, the Starship collection, and then they did the extra large ones and stuff, that went out of business. Someone else has picked it up now, at least to finish the build series. I don't know about the actual other models. There's models of the Enterprise D. They're the Eagle Moss models. How do you know that they're the Eagle? Because they're on the goddamn Eagle Moss stands. I was like, oh my god. But there's loads of Enterprise D, and you see a big poster behind Riker saying Federation Day. And he's like, why is there so many Enterprise D's? And the bar girl's like, no, nobody wants them yolks. And he's like, what? And then he's like, did you hear that, Jean-Luc? And of course Picard's there, and he's like, they don't want the fat ones. He's like, it's called the Galaxy class. So they're making fun of the Galaxy class. So he talks with Riker. Riker manages to figure out what the Firebird code is. Firebird, Freebird, whichever it is. And it was from when Picard was Locutus that there was a virus put into the computer of the Enterprise D that added trees to everything. Which I think they kind of got that wrong. The trees to everything was the episode with Kelsey Grammer. I can't remember the name of the episode. The one where Kelsey Grammer's ship kept coming out of the nebula and hitting the warp nacelle of the Enterprise D and exploding. And the way they figured it out was Data was the only one who they could put something in to remember. And it was tree. Like, it was the trees. So he would look and see Riker's pips, and he'd see tree, and he would remember, open the shuttle bay door, decompress it to push the Enterprise out of the way. So they might have got that mixed up, because I definitely don't ever remember there being any viruses or anything wrong with the computer system in Best of Both Worlds Part 1 or 2. But they figured out, so they're like, right, well, how the hell do we get out to, because it's coordinates, by the way, how do we get out to them coordinates when she said, don't use Starfleet? So Riker goes, I have a plan for that one. And the plan is they're going to make a surprise inspection of the Titan. So Picard will go as Admiral, Riker will go as Captain, and the plan is, Riker says, the plan is, we'll go on there, we'll inspect it, we'll convince Shaw to go to warp out to this sector, and then we'll steal a shuttle, and we'll go down and grab Beverly. So they go to the ship. The first officer, of course, they meet is 7 of 9, and Picard goes to introduce her to Riker and goes, William Riker meets 7, and before he even gets to say 9, she goes, Annika Hansen, and then goes, Captain Shaw prefers my human name. So they tell her, you're invited, or sorry, she tells them, you're invited to dinner with the captain. They're like, well, great, yeah. So they go to the bridge. They see the bridge. There's a black Helms officer standing there, and she's just big grin on her face staring at them. And Picard turns around to 7 and is like, is there something wrong with that ensign? Like, what? And she goes, Ensign LaForge, take your place. And Picard's like, LaForge? And he knows her name. I can't remember what her first name is, something like Serena or something like that. And they're like, oh yeah. Yeah, by the way, this girl is actually, I do believe, LeVar Burton's daughter in real life, like. And they get to know her. Well, they don't get to know her, they know her. And they're talking with her, and they're like, hey, yeah. So they're talking about getting to take the ship out. 7 tells Picard, they're just waiting for you to give the order. And he's like, well, I think you should give the order. So they sit down, and she's like, okay, take us out of space dock, all the rest. We get great shots of the ship coming out of space dock, very reminiscent of the Enterprise, the Constitution class Enterprise refit, I should say, as well, coming out. And she goes, right, once we're clear, Helm, take us to warp. And Picard leans over to her and goes, shouldn't you inform engineering that we're about to jump to warp 9.99? And she turns around and says, the new ships don't have to do that. There's already an automated system that does that. So does it. And Picard's like, oh, I can see you being captain before you know it. No. And Seven's kind of pleased with hearing that, and Riker just goes, good save. Hadwin goes, shut up, Will. So they go to Worf, so they go to dinner. This when we first meet Shaw, and Shaw's already eating. He didn't even wait for Picard and Riker. He's already eating. So they come into the room and they're kind of like, oh. And Seven goes, Captain, I present Admiral Picard and Captain Riker. He's like, oh yeah, gentlemen. And he's like, you don't really have to introduce them, Hanson. I know who they are. And Picard goes, apologies, Captain. Are we late? And he goes, no. Just that your reputation was so big it arrived in the room before you did, so I started. And he's very back-talky to them. And he's sitting there, and so they try to convince him, or they tell him, like, okay, so we're going to go to warp to this sector. And he's like, why would we do that? He's very by the book, this guy. He's like, oh, we're not going to be crash landing on purpose or not on purpose. We're not going to be shooting and blah, blah, blah. So this will be boring for you guys. And when Riker's like, well, we're going to go to warp out here, he's like, why would we do that? And Riker goes, to flex your muscles. And he's like, what? And he's like, you get to run out there and get back in X amount of time. As the captain of this ship, you prove how fast this ship is, how capable it is, all this kind of stuff. It'll look great. And then Picard goes, on the way back though, we stop off at Starbase 4. And Shaw kind of looks a bit suspicious at him. He's like, sir, that's been shut down for the past, I think he says 5 years or something like that. And Picard's like, And Seven goes, I think the Admiral means Starbase 11. And Picard goes, oh yeah, Starbase 11. And Shaw's like, okay, yeah. Yeah, no. And he just continues eating. They're like, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, no, we're not doing that, no. And they're like, he gets a bit quippy at him, and Picard turns around and is like, you realise you're speaking to an admiral? And he goes, yeah, retired. Congrats on that, by the way. And then Riker goes, I'm still captain. And he goes, with no chair. And he just kind of puts down, and then Seven's going to jump and he goes, Hanson, shut it. Your loyalty is to your ship, not to your former friends, particularly the Borg, or your Borg friend. He's taking a pop at Picard as Locutus. And Riker fires back at him and he's like, yeah, whatever, we're not doing that. I'm going to me room. Good luck and thanks, basically. And he leaves, so they're coming out and they're like, what the hell are we going to do now? And Seven sees it, so... Oh, by the way, Shaw tells him, oh, yeah, I hope your quarters are adequate for you. It's the best we could do on such short notice. And we see Picard lying there and he goes, this is humiliating. And it pans out and they're on bunk beds. And Riker's on top going, tell me about it. This is like my academy days. So they're talking a bit, and then they get called to the observation lounge. And they come in and Seven's there. And she straight up's like, okay, you guys either tell me what the hell is going on or I'm blowing you out of an airlock. Riker fires at her, goes, hey, watch your tone, Missy. That's an admiral you're speaking to. And Picard's like, no, it's okay. Like, informs her. And she goes, cool. She takes the ship. She breaks orders and takes the ship to that location. So she tells them, right, look. And like, she's struggling under Starfleet. Picard and Janeway convinced her to join Starfleet. But she's struggling. They're like, you're in the best place you are. And she's like, how am I in the best place when I'm sitting here taking shit off Shaw all day and I'm getting nowhere? And Picard's trying to convince her. And when she's like giving out about it, he's like, well, when you find out the answer, tell me, because I never did. You know, he's basically saying he never knew what the easy solution was to get places, because none of them did. So they arrive to the place and she tells Picard and Riker, you 4 minutes. You know, take the shuttle, you 4 minutes. So they're like, right, understood. Shaw wakes up and notices the nebula. They say, what the hell? So he runs up to the bridge and he's like, where's Picard and Riker? And they're like, we're not sure. So he says, put the ship on lockdowns. They lock down. They go, there's an unauthorized shuttle launch. And the shuttle comes out and he's like, down. And he turns to Seven and is like, you chose loyalty of your friends over the ship. And basically threatening her, like, your career's over, whatnot. And we follow Riker and Picard, and Riker's looking around at the nebula. He's like, it's beautiful, isn't it? And Picard goes, what we spent half our lives chasing. And he goes, Riker repeats, yeah, and the other half missing it. And Picard looks at him and is like, Will, are you enjoying this? He's like, no, of course not, are you? They find the ship, they get on the ship, they find some ashes and phaser burns. The ashes, they don't recognise what kind of species it is. Picard gets onto the bridge and then Riker turns around, there's someone standing behind him. Picard finds Beverly frozen or in the stasis pod, and he hears the door open. He goes, Will, I found Beverly. And he turns around and Riker's there with a phaser to his neck with this guy. And Picard aims his phaser at him. He's like, drop the phaser, that's Captain William Riker you've got there, we're here to help. And he's like, well, what makes you think I want your help? And he convinces him to put the phaser out. As soon as he puts it, Riker just elbows him in the face and grabs the phaser off him. And they're like, who the hell are you? Because there's no way Beverly Crusher wouldn't try and save someone. So who are you? And he says he's her son, alluding to that this guy is going to be the son of Jean-Luc Picard and Beverly Crusher. But once he says, I'm her son, the proximity alarm goes off and he goes, you've led them right to us. And Picard and Riker are like, led who? And he goes, we're being hunted. And they're like, you're being hunted by who? And they're like, he goes, I'll show you. See for yourself. And he opens the view screen and we see this ship, which does have a name. Gary from Nerdrotic said what the name is. I can't remember. It's something like the Sicaro or something like that. Or Shrieker, something weird like that. And we see that coming, and that's where the episode ends. But again, stay for the end credits, because there's clues in the visuals that you're seeing, such as hologram programs and safety protocols deactivated and stuff like that. So just keep an eye out for it. It's off to a good start. I will give it that. I definitely need to see episode 2 to really make the judgment of, is it back to start? The music is Star Trek for sure. It looks more Star Trek. It's still quite dark. I still hate the language being used in it. And the uniforms are garbage. They're cheap looking. They really are cheap looking. But Riker steals the show. So I think I'd probably give this probably a 7.5 out of 10. You know, we have to see where it goes. I hear good things about where it goes, but you know, we're all different. We all make up our own minds. It's definitely more Star Trek, and definitely more watchable and enjoyable than anything of Star Trek that's come out since 2009. I'll put it that way. Anyway, that's the review for it. So cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.